Today on the show, one of the greatest shooters of all time, Jerry Miculek. This Gun Talk Nation is brought to you by ATN Optics. All right, welcome into Gun Talk Nation. Another one, another week, and we're going to be talking with a guy that you guys probably know, or at least you feel like you know him because you've been watching him shoot for years and years. Jerry Miculek. Jerry, welcome in.
Well, thank you. Good to be here. Yes.
Jerry, I mean, gosh, people know you for being obviously a longtime competitive shooter, a guy who can shoot. Seems like you can just shoot everything. But I was thinking about our talk, and I was thinking about probably it's a story you've told at some point, but I was wondering about what's the first gun you remember being your gun?
Oh,
how did this all start?
Well, of course, when you was a kid in South Louisiana, you had BB guns. You know how that was.
Yes.
So when I was old enough to get a BB gun, I had one of the daisies that looked like a '94 Winchester.
Yep.
And wore that thing out.
Wore out the springs and everything, right?
Wore it out, yeah. And then I'm old enough to remember when you could buy 6 of those packs for $1.
Oh my gosh.
Those round tubes that had like 250 in them.
Yeah.
But anyway, we shot that thing to pieces, and then I got a Benjamin pellet gun.
You know what's amazing?
That was like,
I mean, I did the same thing with BB guns and pellet guns. I guess, most of us start out that way. And for a lot of people, they probably go, well, that's just silly stuff. But I feel like that was actually valuable trigger time for me growing up when I was a kid. I mean, I had hundreds and thousands of shots. And I mean, I really feel like it helped me actually be a better shooter and learning to shoot offhand and different things like that. What do you think?
Well, it's very much so. You brought that subject up. It's not really widely known, but back in Vietnam, Daisy had a BB gun that they sold to the military. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
The quick kill, right?
And they also had quick kill. And they had a same version that they sold to the public was quick skill. And the whole idea was, unfortunately, a lot of the people that were being drafted in Vietnam never had touched a firearm before. So even though you go through basic training, standing, kneeling, sitting, prone, it's got nothing to do with really actual fire in combat or live fire. So that to simulate reaction shooting and point shooting, they had BB guns that didn't have any sights on them. They taught them how to shoot instinctively, and it probably saved a lot of soldiers' lives who never had that experience like you and I did. When we were a kid, we're shooting, we'd shoot a tin can from the hip, or the gun upside down or do something. But you learn to instinctively point and then pull the trigger and hit the target. And these guys never had the chance to do that, so they had to break it down to the basics and get that training up to speed. So it was pretty interesting that you said BB gun. It made me think of that. Yeah.
That's probably a really great way to get people started and get them started quicker, I think. I mean, it's almost like you can even a grown-up, you're handing a BB gun to them to get them started versus giving them a real gun per se. They don't have the fear. They don't have the apprehension about it, and they can just start shooting and getting some trigger time. Now, did you end up after the BB guns and pellet guns, did you end up moving towards a 22, or was it like a shotgun or something?
That's what I was trying to remember. Now you brought that question up. I had a 20 gauge single shot, a little Savage, that my dad bought me back from Thibodeau Feed and Seed, back when you could go in a feed store, and buy a gun. And I shot that thing to pieces. I still got it. I got a piece of inner tube on the forearm to keep it held together.
Really?
But the real first firearm, I guess I could say, that I had was a nylon 66.
Oh, wow.
I saved up some money and bought one. I think I paid $44.60 for it because I had to cut a lot of grass and do a lot of things to save up that money to get that 22 rifle. And I still have it. Probably the most reliable firearm I've ever put in my hands.
No kidding.
It's pretty much indestructible. I've shot it underwater probably as much as I did on top, and still 100% gun.
Did you ever end up putting a scope on it, or was it just always iron sights?
I did have a scope on it, but the bad thing about a nylon, it was so flexible.
Yeah.
That it was very dependent on how you torque the rifle. It would change point of aim. So what I did later on, I had gotten another one, and I actually put a pistol scope out on the end of it.
Okay.
And a long eye relief.
Long eye relief.
Something like a scout rifle, but they didn't have scout rifle scopes back then. So it was actually a Tasco pistol scope on the end of the barrel.
No kidding.
And I shot a lot of stuff with it.
Like pretty a little 2-power or something like that?
I think it was, yeah. Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah,
so but it was nylon, but not like the polymer that we're used to today that's actually very strong and rigid. You could actually, that's Jerry, that's how you shoot around corners with that 66. You bend it a little bit.
Yeah, but as far as the way the gun functioned, it was flawless. I remember when I was a kid, Tom Fry was the Remington exhibition guy. We shot, I think it was 50,000 hand thrown 2.5-inch wood blocks. You remember that picture of him sitting on that pyramid of wood blocks with his nylon 66? Yeah. I think he missed 5 or 6 out of 50,000 and not a malfunction in the whole run. So it was it's a great gun, great gun. Was
those station cans, or were they throwing them up in the air or something?
Oh, they were hand thrown.
Okay, hand thrown.
Yeah, I think he shot for 5 or 6 days. Yeah, they would throw a block and he'd shoot it. You know, the repetition. That long day.
Was that? I mean, knowing those exhibition shooters back in the day, was that kind of what piqued you to get more interested beyond a hobby as far as shooting?
It was. You know, you watch. I'm trying to remember Ed Topperwine and his wife Planky, and Herb Parsons, of course, for Winchester. Right. I had a chance to meet John Satterwhite back in the early '80s. I don't know if you knew John Satterwhite or knew of him.
I just know the name.
Yeah, he shot for H&K and he shot for Remington. He was an exhibition guy. He did pretty much what Herb Parsons would do with the shotgun shell. You know, pump a shell and shoot it, or cut the crimp off of a shell and, you know, throw it up and shoot the shot out of it. And he did just about the same routine as Herb Parsons. Herb pretty much set the standard for shotgun exhibition shooting. So I always thought it'd be fun to get in front of a crowd, you know, and do a show and tell and then shoot some guns. I mean, what else could be more fun?
Yeah. And then turning it into a job. I mean, it didn't seem like I guess that's about the only one you could think of that would be like, this can really be a job for somebody?
What John Satterwhite told me one time, if you really want to screw up a good hobby, make it your career.
Absolutely.
But he was an excellent showman. I watched him. I had a chance. I was shooting a steel challenge in California at a place called Rahagi's range, and he was doing 2 performances a day. And I'd want to say this was back in the early '80s, and I would try, if I wasn't shooting, I'd go watch John Satterwhite do his performance, so I could get an idea of how he was reading the crowd, how to get the crowd excited, and, you know, what to do, what not to do. And he was a good showman, and he was fun to watch. He made it look easy. So someone who's really good at what they do, they make it look really easy. Yeah, and he was capable of doing that.
I wonder if for some of those guys was the shooting the easy part, but actually having to be a showman was the other part. I mean, that's why people come, right?
Right, like Tom Knapp. I don't know if you had a chance. You know Tom Knapp.
Sure.
He was
Tom Knapp.
He had his presentation, you know, and his mannerisms, and so it's not only do you have to shoot, but you have to be somewhat of an entertainer and keep it exciting for people to enjoy what you are doing. And what's happening now with TV, especially, the perception of shooting has been elevated. You know, you got a guy jumping out of a building upside down, shooting, you know, 2 or 3 guns at one time while they fall in 10 stories. People want to see that, which is not real. So to impress someone in live fire, it's really hard.
That's a good point. They see this stuff that they think, well, I saw a guy do that on Mission Impossible Part 6. And you're like, yeah, that wasn't actually real. He wasn't in Dubai. Yeah. He wasn't jumping off the building.
Yeah. Yeah. I think on the movie Shooter, I think that's the name of it, where they put a 2-liter bottle in front of a .22 rifle as a suppressor. And he made this fantastic shot standing in a boat like 100 yards away. And we all know if you shot through a bottle, you would deflect the projectile so bad you probably couldn't hit the other bank.
Right.
But
yeah.
The movie made it look really good.
There's a lot of ones that we see in movies that you just try to have to tell people that's not real.
It doesn't happen that way. Doesn't happen that way. No.
So, Jerry, we're going to take a quick break, but after the break, I want to find out about your start in competition shooting. In fact, your first match. Do you want to be able to see in the dark? Sure, we all do. ATN Optics makes thermal and night vision, and right now they have some sales going on. The ATN Thor LT 160 3-to-6 power thermal rifle scope, the ultra light thermal rifle scope. It was $1,000. Now it's $899 on their website, and they have extra offers going on where you get some extra free gear, like little rings to mount. So very cool, very easy way, inexpensive way to get into thermal. The ATN Thor LT. Springfield Armory, the Prodigy is out, and this is a double stack 1911. And this sucker is cool. I've shot it 17+1 or 20+1 capacity in a 9mm double stack gun. They have optics ready versions, and they have a couple different lengths as well. They have a 5-inch gun and a 4.5-inch gun, but it's got all the tricked out features: ambi safety, U-notch sight picture, accessory rail on the front, black Cerakote finish, skeletonized hammer, forward slide serrations. And it's one of those guns that when you shoot it, you go, wow, this is cool. So go check out the Springfield Armory Prodigy. Hey, it's holiday time, and if you go over to Shop Ruger, they have all sorts of gifts: Ruger gear, flashlights, belts, pendants, bags, like range bags and stuff like that. But you can also get extra stuff for your Ruger guns: extra magazines, mag loaders, slings, cases. So go check out shopruger.com, load up on some stocking stuffers for all the Ruger people in your family, or let's be honest, for yourself. SIG Sauer Custom Works, the P320 Studio. You design it, SIG builds it. You start out with your fire control unit. That's the heart of the matter. That's the heart of the gun. Then you pick your grip modules. You pick your slide. You pick your barrel. You pick your guides and springs. You pick your magazines. You even pick your optics. And SIG will build out a custom gun. And typically this is taking about 4 to 6 weeks right now. So check it out, the SIG Custom Works P320 Studio. So Jerry, obviously you're known for being a top competition shooter as well, but what was your first match like?
Well, I'll tell you how I got into shooting. My little brother and I, we both hunted and shot as much as we possibly could, just playing, and back when we were kids, open air dump, every township, every city had a dump. That's just what it was. So that was an opportunity. There was endless targets there. I mean, people went sighting their rifles. It was just a place to shoot. Actually, it was. If you research it, it was pretty common place to shoot. But anyway, my little brother came back one day. He said he met a guy shooting in a dump, and he had a piece of steel on a stick, and he was drawing his .45 pistol out of a holster and shooting this target. Oh. And I said, that can't be right. So anyway, I jumped in the truck with him. We went down there, and there was this gentleman there. He had a Swenson .45. Arnold Swenson, back then with the square trigger guard. And he had a leather holster on with a couple of magazine pouches, and he was drawing, shooting this piece of steel. Super nice guy. He was a contractor out of Arizona. He was working on some of the industry there on the Mississippi River. And he was a member of the Miller Combat League, which actually predated Cooper.
I was going to say, it's like the old leather slap, but which was in Arizona, right?
Yeah. So Ben Ashmore was the gentleman's name, and he had this cool gun. It was chrome plated. I think they used to call it Armalloy finish, kind of a matte chrome. Beautiful gun, Smith & Wesson sights, and just a nice guy. We started talking. He said, "Yeah, I just moved down here. I'm thinking about putting on a little competition, and we're going to shoot this kind of stuff." So that was it right there. I mean, come on, we got to do this. And my little brother and I started getting equipment together. And a friend of mine, Elliot Izan, who I've shot with ever since grade school, he's also a really fabulous shot also. He competes, he and his wife Annette. But anyway, we all got together, we got guns, and Ben put on a competition. It was 1976. And I shot it and I actually won it.
So you did win the first competition you were in, huh?
I did, but there wasn't a bunch of guys that knew much of anything. You know, it could have been anybody, but I happened to whatever scrap through it and make it. And I was shooting a Colt Gold Cup at the time, and then soon after that I switched to a Model 10 revolver and I started shooting revolvers. But yeah, it was 1976. Yeah, pretty cool.
So do you remember, that's so interesting. You weren't really even aware that action pistol kind of quick draw type competition even existed until this guy showed up at the dump from Arizona.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What was the layout of that particular competition? How did they do it? It was just a few steel targets or something?
We had some steel, but he had, if I remember right, there was some paper in it also. But I want to say back when we first started, we made our own paper targets. We'd collect cardboard boxes, and we actually had a pattern that we came up with, the scoring system, and we shot paper and we shot steel, and just kind of, and they didn't have timers back then like we have now. So you started with either a go, and every stage of fire had a steel stop plate. You had a couple of guys on stopwatches. So when you hit the stop plate, the guys would hit the stopwatches, and you kind of synchronize it and write down a time. And that's what you went with. So it got the job done. But it was a lot of fun. Another guy I want to bring up, Walter Walsh. You know who Walter Walsh was? He was famous Marine combat instructor. FBI agent, been in untold gun battles. He had medaled in every NRA discipline. I'd asked Jim Sr. about this when I met Jim back in the early 2000s. Who was the best shooter in the world? And he said Walter Walsh. So I had to start researching him. But anyway, I had a chance to meet Walter. But I had read on his bio that he started shooting mice in a local dump with a BB gun. So it's one of those.
Yep.
That's why he started. He went on to be one of the most famous. The
local dumps were where everybody got started.
Apparently so. So it wasn't, Walter Walsh. Pretty incredible guy.
Did you get to shoot with him?
I met him in Boston. I want to say he was 96 at the time. He lived, I want to say 106 or 107.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was quite the guy. He was true marksman in and out. When Jim Sr. told me, Walter Walsh, I come to find out later that he was Jim Sr. VAR instructor in the Second War at Camp Pendleton. And then then Walter went on and, fought out, I think, on some of the island campaigns. And then he got into the FBI, where he was in numerous gun battles and always came out the victor. So he was a real deal.
He was tested.
He was. Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit about the gear, and you've been there for a lot of the changes and evolutions of this stuff. And even, and Jerry, you're a guy who jumps in with whatever the modern stuff is even today, right? How would you describe if somebody says, hey, how has the gear changed over the years? What are some of the big ones, the biggest changes or the biggest advancements as far as you're concerned when it comes to the guns and gear?
I would say the quality of the gun out of the box is a lot better. Mm-hmm. You can buy almost you can buy a top of the line race 1911. Well, back in the 70s, the only thing available was basically like a Colt Combat Commando or a government model, and you had to take it to someone, get good sights, good triggers, bag well. Back in those days, 45 was the pistol to have, 1911.
Right. And
now it's evolved into the polymer guns. And the polymer guns and the technology on the magazines has really changed. If I had to say one thing that's been a drastic improvement, even, everybody likes a 1911, but the original magazine that came with that gun from the first war all the way on until Chip McCormick and Bill Wilson and all these guys actually started making good quality magazines, was all set to shoot 230 grain ball ammo.
Oh, so if you found something other than that, the magazines didn't like it.
You have a lot of trouble. So the technology behind magazines has really progressed to the point to where just about any gun you pick up, it's going to have a good quality magazine, and it's going to be well manufactured. And the understanding of what makes a good pistol mag good is pretty widespread.
I've had gun designers tell me that designing the magazine is just as hard as designing the gun.
It is, and that's the it's the part of the gun that's the most important. If it has to be, that's one thing I've said about the M&P, the Smith & Wesson M&P from its inception was it's got such a good magazine. I've got magazines that I've shot forever, and they haven't fractured, and they feed well without any maintenance. And that's something as the 2011, the 1911, the double wide bodies came out, 38 Supers, 10 mils, and 40 calibers. You had to spend $150 to have somebody tune your magazine to make it work right. That's evolving into now where it's becoming a factory item, and the technology to have that magazine function with a wide variety of different ammunition has advanced, because it is the heart and soul of a pistol. If that doesn't work, the rest of it doesn't matter.
Well, and it's a good point too, because if you think about, we've got more and more variety, especially in the ammo. There's some really wild stuff out there, from super light load, super light bullets that are a 50 grain 9mm in an extreme sense, and then all the way up to these different shaped bullets that are machined and kind of probably would drive you crazy if you're trying to make the gun and the magazine work with all these different possibilities.
Right. Yeah. So the technology has really changed. Yep.
What about the optics side of things? I mean, certainly we've seen a lot of things change, and now we're seeing red dots on electronic sights being used pretty commonly now.
Yeah, that's evolving, and that's actually evolving very quickly now, even more. Jerry Barnhart won that USPSA Nationals in 1990 with an optic, which was, he was the first guy to actually really shoot one in a national, that he won the overall with it. And he stated right there, he stated through his action that if you wanted to be a grandmaster and win, you had to have an optic on your gun. Yeah. And back then, the optics were such poor quality, or the field of view was so small. They had good quality optics, but the field of view was like looking through a straw, and they were big and bulky. So that's evolved now to the point to where they're very small and they're very reliable, have good battery life. So it's just the evolution of something that's better.
And then you've got, all the accessories and the aftermarket. And like you're saying, you don't have to take your gun and spend a bunch of time and money getting it fixed to make it run right out of the box. These guns are pretty good. That being said, you're a guy who you will modify your guns to make them run how you want them to run. What is there something out there that is like step one for anyone who likes to mess with their gun and tinker? Is there kind of like, hey, here's step one on a pistol of what I would do, or on a rifle?
Well, that's a broad question. I usually frame that into what you're trying to do with it. If you want a competition gun, the first thing you want to have is it has to be, number one, it has to be reliable. I'd take that over accuracy.
And the funny thing is, in different matches, you have a lot of competitive shooters are tinkering with their guns, and sometimes I find that they make them induce malfunctions because they're playing with the slide and the ammo and everything on the gun, right?
Yeah, that's the old saying about a fishing lure is made to catch the fisherman and not the fish. So there's a lot of gadgets out there that's made to catch you and not necessarily make you a better shooter, but it's a tinker. It's another thing you can tinker with. You're trying to buy performance instead of standing on the line and grinding it out and putting hours in. We've all been guilty of that. I've modified. You take an AR-15, an MSR. I don't know if there's any other platform that's had more money dedicated to its inception and its application and testing in the U.S. government. So you sell that to an individual like me, I'm going to make it better. I'm going to put a $15 part that Fred Smith down the road said this is going to make it faster. So I take the whole platform, the whole system that was tuned to function at minus 30 degrees up to you can't hold the gun hot, and I'm going to put a $30 part in it. I'm going to make it better.
We can't help ourselves, right?
Yeah. So we are our worst enemy, but then on the other side, we do learn from that. And some innovations have come from that because the government standards are just what that is. And guys who tinker, who learn through experience, and sometimes you make it better.
Well, and along those lines, top shooters like you have not only in the gear side, but also shooting technique side have been tapped to train our elite military, because you guys are the ones who are, I guess I would say kind of experimenting with the techniques, the shooting techniques and the gear. That's been a big change over the years of just how we shoot. That's when you brought that subject up, and as an enthusiast and a competitor and somewhat of an instructor periodically, is that it's constantly evolving. I'm still somewhat competitive. I'm 68 years old. So if I would shoot today like I did back in 1976, the way I term it is I would have fossilized, and I would be right there in 1976. Right. So I've had to go through like 5 distinct technique changes to get me where I'm at today. And when I watch the competition level, I know that something's going to have to change tomorrow so I can keep up. So what I do today, like if I'm doing a class, say with you, and I'll tell you the first thing, what you see me do today, I might not do tomorrow. This is just the current best way I know how to do it.
That's the current best way. Tomorrow might bring another way. We had a gentleman from Japan show up at Steel Challenge, and all he shot was soft air. And when he came here, he rented a 38 Super, and he actually beat us like 2 or 3 years at our own game.
No kidding. Just doing airsoft all year long and then shooting a real gun one time a year.
But the way he stood, the way he held his pistol was totally different than what we did.
Sure.
Totally different. And for Steel Challenge, he was on the money.
Wow. Well,
so one thing doesn't.
I was just thinking that's interesting. I mean, you don't have the recoil with airsoft, but if you have a 38 Super with a comp on it and everything, maybe you don't have too much recoil to contend with. I don't know.
Is the way he stood and the way he presented himself to the target was different than what we did, but it was actually faster. But to train for that, you'd have to almost specialize just in that.
Sure.
And not other disciplines. So one discipline does not necessarily carry to the other.
Gotcha. So it was very specific for the Steel Challenge.
It was, but it was pretty amazing when you watch the gentleman shoot. He didn't shoot the edges of the target. He actually shot the center of the targets.
Wow.
And we were just scraping trying to hit the edges. He was actually shooting groups on his target at speed. And it was actually, that's what I like to see is what happened is as a group of individuals, we get so I can say this, we get kind of indoctrinated into a thought pattern. Say we see Rob Latham or Barnhart, or you see me shoot, say, I want to do like that. So all of a sudden you have this perception that this is good. And you stop thinking about, well, hey, what if I did it this way? What if I stood back? What if I did this? And you stop learning and you go out and you kind of fossilize in your technique. And somebody from across the ocean, just like the Filipino people back in I would say late 80s, the early 90s, the Philippines have some great shooters. They are truly dedicated. They're hardworking, but they evolved their form different because they wasn't too much influenced by the U.S. shooters like Rob Latham and Barnhart. Right. So when they came to Steel Challenge, they had different technique and different way to draw the gun into the target with the elbow position. And it was pretty amazing to watch these people, and I say that with great respect, use different form to do exceptionally well.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's interesting that you can do it so that much different from each other, but still have good results. And I guess it doesn't
Right.
mean that everyone starts doing that one thing. It's just different ways to go about it. It's different golf swings.
Yeah, that's what I call it, fossilizing. Once you have a perception of knowledge, you quit learning.
Yeah. So, you were talking about going up and talking with Jim Clark Sr. and who was the best
Yeah.
shooter he'd ever seen. You've seen a bunch of shooters. I mean, you're one of the best that's ever lived. Who's the best shooter that you've ever seen or shot with?
Ooh, well, Daniel Horner. I don't know if you know
Daniel's pretty
Daniel Horner.
phenomenal.
Daniel, when Daniel shows up to a 3-gun match, there's Daniel Horner, then there's everybody else. And that's just the way it is. What's the little gentleman from California? Casey Azubio?
Yeah. KC.
He is KC when it comes to steel challenge. His ability to see fast makes him what he is. KC is like the man. And you got you have JJ Racaza, Robert Vogel. I don't know if you know Bob Vogel.
Oh, sure. Phenomenal pistol shooter.
Bob probably has the most, at least I could say this, locked on ability to hold a pistol out of recoil of any human I've ever seen. So when you look at Bob Vogel's technique, it is spotless. When you watch Bob shoot and the way he scores and the way you see his targets after he shoots, his ability to hold rapid fire is just it's untouchable. He's got it. He's the man.
Is that a factor of strength or technique or a little bit of both?
It's some of it way he hold. Well, of course, he has extremely strong grip, but the way he holds the gun and the way his hands are built, he can torque it in and he can make it happen. So it's part of it is his physical ability to hold the gun in a certain way, but it's also the way he trains and he knows. Yeah, he's got it, man. He's the one there when it comes to shooting fast and keeping them on target.
And it's interesting, the folks you mentioned, they're all good shooters, but they all seem to sort of be born for a particular type, right? A certain type of shooting. Just you've for many years, everybody would consider you like the revolver guy, even though you shoot a lot of things really well. Revolvers seem to make sense to you, come naturally. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but and like KC is a speed shooter guy.
Yeah,
it's interesting. You're suited to one discipline, perhaps.
What really comes into when I watch somebody shoot is what really separates a speed shooter from the other guy, even though his hands are as fast or his feet are as fast or whatever, is his ability to see fast. That seems to be in a person or it's not. And it's just like you take a bullseye guy. Like if you go to the Army marksmanship unit, they have people that just shoot bullseye. They'll never let them shoot speed.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Yeah, because it corrupts them too much.
It just messes them up.
It will corrupt them too much. So one to do the other at an extreme level, it doesn't overlap at all. Like I told Jim Sr., and Jim Sr. was such a good trigger man. He was like, the way I referred a bullseye guy to a person that shoots bullseye, you can set him on fire and he's not going to jump. You throw a match at an action shooter, he's going to run 50 yards before that match hits the ground. It's just a total different physiological presence of a person. Like I told Jim Sr., if you ever felt my trigger pull, you'd probably pass out because you wouldn't know how to handle it. And I could never shoot what Jim did. He could break a shot under stress and just do it with repetition. And that's what a bullseye guy can do. He can blank out everything else, zone in and break that shot. Whereas an action shooter doesn't have the presence to do that. He's going to have shot 3 times, 4 times. He's just not in it. It's like a racehorse. He's going to have to run. It's just totally different.
The bullseye guy says it's not possible to shoot that fast. And someone like KC said, I don't think it's possible to shoot that slow.
That's exactly right. What KC also proved at Steel Challenge that you can miss fast enough to win.
Really? Because usually you have to shoot it clean to really win it.
Not if you shoot in steel challenge, you have to know how to miss fast. And he proved that as a competitor. If you want to shoot at Casey's level, you're gonna have to learn how to miss fast.
You got to shoot where like the wheels are coming off the car, kind of shooting.
Well, you got to keep it in. You got to keep it in between the lanes.
Yeah.
And every now and then you're going to slip one. But if you don't shoot at that level, you'll never beat KC or Max.
Yeah.
It won't happen. It just doesn't happen that way. It's a different mindset, but it gets the job done. And they are really good at what they do. They can see fast. That's the
Well, Jerry, this has been fun. I have one other question, just because we hadn't really talked too much about the new stuff, but you get to play with all kinds of different guns. What's been kind of, it could be either a gun or a piece of gear in the last couple of years? What's been something that's come out that's been a little bit of something that you just liked? Because we see a lot, and sometimes we see stuff where we say, okay, it's not that new, but sometimes there's ones that stick out to you. Go, man, I really like this one.
I think the evolution of the small everyday carry guns has been pretty amazing. The little polymer guns. Smith has the Shield, and other companies have theirs. I'm more familiar with the Shield. If you that gun 20 years ago would have been historic.
Right.
So much in such a small package. Because with a Browning
Plus, it's funny, like the Shield Plus, those guns, because I'm not an engineer guy, I keep looking at them going, there's some kind of magic here. I don't know how they're getting 12 rounds or whatever it is in this little gun.
Yeah. Well, that's what they said about the Browning high power when it came out in the 30s. 1935? How can you get all this ammunition in one gun? Now you've got more in a gun 45% smaller, and just as reliable. That's the whole thing. It's just as reliable, if not more. The technology, I think, of the magazines now are better than a high power ever had.
Now, I was going to say that, and a lot of what's amazing about these new little carry guns is the magazine technology and the geometry of being able to fit all the rounds in there.
Yeah, make it work too. It's got to work hot or cold. That's one thing I do to my guns. If I have a carry gun, I'll throw it in the freezer overnight with my ammunition, and I'll take it out and shoot it weekend unsupported as light as I possibly can to see if it's going to run. And if it's going to run there, I know there's nothing I can do to it to have it not run.
I like it. There you go.
It has to prove itself. It goes in the freezer.
Your Jerry test for your carry gun, the freezer test.
We were doing a sheriff's class one night, and they were shooting full size 45s. I won't mention the brand, but they were very good guns, ball ammunition, and the malfunction rate got so bad. It got down to like 16 degrees, and the malfunction rate got so high we had to quit because it got so dangerous.
Really?
And I would have never thought
of the lube getting
the lube, the ammunition, the guns. I don't know what it was, but it got so bad. If I wouldn't have seen it, I wouldn't have believed that would have happened. It got to where there was frost on the targets where tape wouldn't stick, and the guns quit. It was like, we're not shooting. And I'm going like, well, we're here, guys. And the gun said no.
Yeah.
That kind of opened my eyes to, what you should get out of a gun when the weather's not good. So.
Wow. That's very interesting. And we get these benefits of being around a lot of different guns, a lot of different shooters, and a lot of different environments. When we're doing this day in and day out, that's an interesting lesson learned. Jerry, thanks for being on with us. This has been fun.
My pleasure.
Yeah. We'll have to do it again sometime soon. This has been great. You guys, there you go. Maybe you're putting your gun in the freezer to test it out soon. That's it for us. We'll see you next time on Gun Talk Nation.